Hello. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Daniel. Daniel Lopez, son of Roy and Lucy Lopez, who are here as a part of your church. I am a student. I have one more semester at Oklahoma Wesleyan University. I'm studying pastoral ministries with a little bit in youth ministry, a little bit in intercultural ministry, a little bit in global studies, a little bit of theology. I'm trying to get as much as I can in and preparing myself for life in ministry. Thank you. I really appreciate the opportunity to be here. I'm very thankful for this opportunity. Number one, because it gets to develop me a little bit more in what I'm trying to do with the rest of my life. Number two, it justifies me leaving school early and I get to miss a class. But I'm very thankful for this opportunity. And before I even get started here, I really have to settle this debate that I found myself having with some guys in school in the past few weeks. When is too early for Christmas music? So if you think that November is too early for Christmas music, please raise your hand. I wanted to see more hands. I'm okay with this. A quick story. One of the things that's really cool about my school and my opportunities there is I'm a resident assistant. So essentially, I'm a glorified babysitter in some ways. And there's about 25 guys that live on my floor. We have a community bathroom. So basically, for all the mothers in the room, it's a nightmare because there's a bunch of 18 and 19-year-old guys who all share the same bathroom. So one day I was in there. I was washing my hands, I was on my way out, and a guy walks in, and he's just blaring Christmas music, and I just stop, and I look at him, and I say, Landon, you know it's not even Thanksgiving yet. In fact, it wasn't even Halloween yet. It was in October, and he said, listen, it's never too early to get into the Christmas spirit. Do you hate the holidays? So I was being accused of hating holidays because I said it's too early for Christmas music. But now I know that I'm among fellow believers that November is too early, and especially October. So again, I'm very thankful to Pastor Flick and to Jacob for even considering me for this opportunity. There's so many other people that could have been asked, yet they asked me. I'm very thankful for that. And I have some slides. Hopefully they'll be coming. Yeah, there we go. So today we're talking about the spirit of Thanksgiving, a spirit of Thanksgiving. So if you want to open your Bibles, go ahead and open them to Philippians chapter 4. We're going to be in verses 1 through 9. But before we get to that, I kind of want to set the scene a little bit. So again, right, this week is Thanksgiving. It's kind of nice when the church asks you to come preach and they give you something like, oh yeah, just talk about Thanksgiving. That's nice for me instead of just saying, like, preach on whatever you want. So Thanksgiving is, we're getting into this time of year where you start to see the Christmas lights are going up, and it's the holiday season, right? It's coldish weather a little bit, a lot of food, a lot of family gatherings. I have some pictures there. Santa drives a Dodge Ram tow truck, if you didn't know. We start putting up Christmas decorations. We start putting up Christmas trees. We start doing all these things that make it feel like Christmas, right? We get into this time and this season where we get a little bit too distracted with these things, but we start thinking a lot about like, oh man, I got to start getting Christmas presents, right? Those of us who are in the room who are not very good at this sort of thing, we're going to wait till the week before Christmas to get our presents. But we start to think about all these things, and it's like this focus of the year shifts finally of this like hot climate mindset into this like cold weather, family, closeness. We're going to be stuck inside with some snow every once in a while, so we better start getting along, sort of thing. We start to get this mentality of Christmas time, right? Thanksgiving kind of gets blown over a little bit by the whole Christmas spirit, but Thanksgiving and Christmas, I think, are very heavily involved with one another. And one of the things that I always think of when I get to sort of Thanksgiving time is the times where I've had an opportunity to be thankful for something or thankless for something. And one of the times that I can recall, well, probably the most common occurrences in my life, was around Christmas time. I remember being about the age of 6, and of course, little kid, you want presents, right? You walk up to the Christmas tree and you start looking around, and you're like, oh, you see that big box there? No, that's my present. And then you like looking for a name, and then when you don't see your name on it, you get a little sad. You're like, well, I'm sure they still love me. I remember. Yeah. That was me sometimes. I remember there was an instance where we went to my grandparents' house for Christmas. So the way we would do it is we would have Christmas at our house, all the family, later in the night. But before that, we would go and visit my grandparents. And they would always have presents for me. My aunts and uncles were there. So they had presents for me. And as a little kid, I get a present from Grandma. I'm like, oh, yes. So I get it. I start tearing it open. And then I open the box, and it's socks. And 6-year-old me wants to be like, wow, this is awful. Throw it out the window. I'm like, where's the toys, right? Now, if you give me a pair of socks, I'm going to be happy, right? I need this, Mom and Dad. Right? But I looked like that, because I'm like, well, I wanted toys. I wanted playthings. I wanted pieces of plastic that were going to last 6 months if I was lucky. But I was getting socks and shirts and underwear, and I was kind of sad. But then again, now you give me those things, I'll be the happiest person. But that was a moment of thanklessness. And typically we associate this with a sort of childishness, right? We expect kids to be a little sad when we get them clothes. You want them to have like, here's a really cool shirt. You like that? And they're like, oh, thanks. I remember every time I think about getting my nephew CJ a birthday present, I never want to get him like clothes, because then I'm like, man, if I was him, I'd be like, really? So like I try to find like a truck or a tow truck or like an action figure, something that I think that like, if I were him, I would want that, right? So I try to put myself in his mindset and try to give him something that he'd be thankful for. Something that he could remember, something that he would appreciate. That's what I try to do when I think about getting gifts for somebody or doing things for somebody else. I want to give them something they would be thankful for. So I have a question that I want to sort of propose, and I want you to think about as we get into the Word. On the next slide, it says this. It says, what is the spirit of thanksgiving? So just think about that. What is the spirit of thanksgiving? Because if I were to say that to you in sort of like Bible study, right? That sounds like one of those really Christianese things that we say to one another. We sound kind of holy when we say it, with the spirit of thanksgiving. But we never really talk about what that means. We never really address what a spirit of thanksgiving looks like. Rather, we just kind of talk about having the spirit. Oh, he has the spirit of thanksgiving. She has the spirit of thanksgiving. What does that even mean? Right? And how do we tell the difference? How do we adopt a spirit of thanksgiving for this holiday season? Well, let's sort of dive into this. So if you'll turn with me to Philippians chapter 4, verses 1 through 3, it says this. So then, my brothers, I have dearly loved and longed for, my joy and crown. In this manner, stand firm in the Lord, dear friends. I urge you, Euodia, and I urge Syntyche, to agree in the Lord. Yes, I also ask you, true partner, to help these women who have been in the gospel at my side, along with Clement and the rest of my co-workers, whose names are in the book of life. So really quick, I want to get into a little bit of biblical history here. Paul is writing to a church in Philippi, which I don't believe the city is still called Philippi. But essentially, when Paul was on his 5-year journey on his ministries, he was walking across around the sea, and he writes to this church in Philippi where he had established a church, he had left, he was in another place, and he heard about them, so he's writing a letter back to them. And these people he's talking about, Clement and the women that were at his side, they're also missionaries. They're people who are going there, they're teaching them, they're sharing the gospel with them, they're growing with them. It's kind of like how Pastor Blake kind of asked me to be here. It's that sort of thing. He's asking them to go to encourage them and to be thankful for their opportunity, right? So Paul and his many friends who are all contending for the gospel, he wants them to get along with one another. He doesn't want them to waste energy in disagreeing with one another. He wants them to be thankful for this opportunity. He wants them to take advantage of it and to be making the most out of that time, right? Instead, put their lives into ministry and to reach more people who need the gospel. That's what he wants them to do. That's sort of like a setting for us. Like right now in this moment, when we're all gathered here, we all pretty much have the same belief, right? That God is God and Lord of our lives. If I just said that, then everybody would call it, yeah, I can agree with that. So then there's no reason to disagree with one another. There's no reason to argue with one another. Instead, we should build one another up so that we can go out there and reach more people and start filling these seats. Right? That's what Paul's telling them to do, and that's what Paul's encouraging them in. So we go to the next one, verses 4 through 7, and this is sort of the meat of the passage here. Rejoice in the Lord always. Let me read this first. Rejoice in the Lord always. I will say it again, rejoice. Let your graciousness be known to everyone. The Lord is near. Don't worry about anything, but in everything through prayer and petition, with thanksgiving, let your requests be made known to God. And the peace of God, which surpasses every thought, will guard your hearts and minds in Christ Jesus. So you have it there highlighted in red. Everything through prayer and petition, with thanksgiving, let your requests be made known to God. So there it is right there, like a spirit of thanksgiving, with thanksgiving. What does that even mean, right? Because sometimes Paul does this thing, which I've learned that it's really annoying, and I'm glad that my English teachers have taught me otherwise. Paul loves run-on sentences. He loves to just go on and on and on and on. If you've ever read anything of Paul, you're like, man, when does this guy take a breath? When I try to read, it's really hard. When I try to read Paul in the original language, in the Greek text, it is very difficult. Because in Greek, they don't have punctuation marks. They don't have verses. They don't have paragraphs. They don't have chapters. Instead, you got to try to keep track of all the words. It's like, okay, he's using new words. This must be a new section. You got to try to keep track of everything. Paul just goes on and on and on. But what he's saying here is to rejoice in the Lord always. I will say it again, rejoice. Let your graciousness be known to everyone. The Lord is near. And sometimes that sounds like, well, okay. Is it a command? Are you telling me to do something? He says, yes. Rejoice in everything. Always. Situations and circumstances, they can get pretty tough in this world. Right? If I had everyone in the room raise their hand for any tough thing they've ever gone through in their life, I doubt there'd be very many people without a hand. Okay? Everybody goes through things. Everybody has their own circumstances. And that's something we need to understand about one another. Now, when you try to be a believing Christian in this world, it gets even harder. When you try to stand up for faith, it gets even harder. It gets more and more difficult to stand up behind that faith. Why is that? Because Christianity is something that's so backwards to the way that the world works, everything seems to be against it. If you ever really thought about the things that Christianity holds and the things that the world holds, you would see how much they just butt heads with one another. So when you think about, we can say things that the United States does. When you think about some of the things, the decisions that the government has made, and some of the things that the Bible holds in value, you start to see, okay, well, there's a little bit of conflict here. So how in the world is the church and the government supposed to get along? There are very long discussions that they try to decide all of these things. It can get very messy sometimes. But that's because Christianity is such a radical thing, it's such a life-altering thing. It gets hard to follow, right? So that way only real believers end up sticking to it. So Paul is saying, rejoice in everything. When you find yourself at odds with one another, rejoice. Because you have someone to be at odds with. When you find yourself in a situation that makes it feel like I can't believe in anything, rejoice. Because at least you have the opportunity to struggle with something. And it will grow you. So, rejoice in your victory. Rejoice in defeat. Rejoice in everything. Because God's near. And it's something that sometimes we just forget about that. That God isn't this distant force, right? He didn't take the world in this little form of a watch, make it spin, and then walk away from it. He's just kind of watching. No, he's very, very close. He's intimate, right? If you ever thought about Christianity and your prayer life and all of those things, if you ever pray and then you get the little chills, right? Or during worship when that song is just right, and you get chills down your spine, that might be the presence of God. He's a very intimate God who's not trying to be distant from us. So, verse 6, and this is the verse that holds probably the most weight in this passage. Don't worry about anything, but in everything, through prayer and petition, with thanksgiving. Let your requests be made known to God with thanksgiving. How does that work? Right? What does it mean to say you're doing something with thanksgiving? Well, I propose that thanksgiving is much less of a spirit, right? I call this the spirit of thanksgiving. Well, even deeper than that, I think that thanksgiving is more of a stance than it is a spirit. And what do I mean by a stance? By a stance, I mean it's a way that we present ourselves before God when we're praying for something. It's a presentation before God so that God knows that we are. Because sometimes we find it kind of hard to think, right? Sometimes we go through life and it can be a little difficult and we find it really hard to be thankful for something. It is more of a stance. It is more of a way of presenting ourselves before God and letting Him know that, hey, we are thankful for everything you have done for us. We really appreciate all of this. And sometimes we don't do a great job of showing. But remember to hold the stance of thanksgiving before God. When you are praying, you're petitioning for something before Him. When you're asking for, God, can I get this promotion? Make sure you have a stance of thanksgiving to say that I am thankful for everything you've done, and I'm praying for this too. God, I'm not saying that I hate my life. I'm just saying that I'm thankful for everything you've done, and I have this to bring forward too. Okay? Verses 8 and 9 really quickly. Finally, brothers, whatever is true, whatever is honorable, whatever is just, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is commendable, if there's any moral excellence, and if there is any praise, dwell on these things. Do what you have learned and received, and heard, and seen in me, and the God of peace will be with you. Praise and dwell on those things. That's what Paul is saying. He's saying that if there's anything in your life that has ever gone your way, that you've ever done for God, and it's worked out, then hold on to that. Dwell on it. That's how you keep it going, right? Because it can get really hard to be thankful for God and thankful for your life whenever every little thing is just going against you and against you. And you feel like you're in an ocean, you're just getting hit by wave after wave after wave. It can be so hard to be thankful. But this is how Paul tells us to keep going. Okay? So let's get into a little bit of this, how we begin to sort of understand this and apply this. So if you'll go back to that next slide where it has this sort of big idea on it, I want to talk about this a little bit more. The way we present ourselves to God is important, and it changes our hearts and the way we think of God when we pray. So think about this. We always say there are people who have less than us, but do we ever actually acknowledge what that might look like? Do you really, really think about what having less looks like? Because there are some people in the world that just, man, I don't understand how they get through the day. Let alone how are they ever thankful to God, When we consider sort of world standards, we consider our lives, I find myself kind of angry with myself. I remember when I was at home a few summers ago, our air conditioner. Now, you all live in West Texas, you know it gets hot in the summertime. Right? And when your air conditioner goes out, you don't have air pumping through the house. I get a little agitated because it's like 80 degrees inside. I come inside to find relief from the heat, not to bake in it. Right? So I find myself being like, Mom, what's going on? She's like, well, the air conditioner's broken. We can't get it fixed till tomorrow. And for the rest of the day, I'm like, God, why are you Christian? Really? Over an air conditioner when I could be thinking about, at least I have a house to sit in, at least I have electronics to distract myself with, at least I have parents to complain to, right? I have all these things. I could go to Sonic and get a drink. There's a lot of people who can't do that. When you really think about what having less has, or what having less looks like, you start to think of yourself as having a lot. For example, if you go to the next slide, I think it's the next slide. Richard Wurmbrand. If you don't know the name, I wouldn't be super surprised because I didn't know the name before. Richard Wurmbrand is a believer. He was a believer. He wrote a book called Tortured for Christ. If you know anything about Richard Wurmbrand's story, he was a believer in the Poland area near Russia, and he lived through the Nazi invasion. He lived through World War II. He lived through Russia's dominance of that area. He lived through those things. He wrote the book Tortured for Christ, but he had this to say about it. He said, Tortured for Christ has no literary value. It was written in only 3 short days after my release from prison, but it was written with pen and tears, and for some reason, God has chosen to bless this writing and use it for his purpose. Richard Wurmbrand endured years in prison, not just in prison, but tortured in prison. He was tortured because of what? He said he's a Christian. Because he believed in God. He endured torture under the communist regime. He was beaten. He was flayed. He was tortured when he came to testify to the United Nations and to talk about the things that Russia was doing. He showed them his body. He showed them his back, his stomach, his sides, and the way they reacted to it. It was hard to look at. It's very hard to look at. It's very hard to imagine how could a human being do this to another human being. But Richard Wurmbrand said this about those people that did that to him. He said, hate the evil systems, but love your persecutors. Love their souls and try to win them for Christ. How in the world could somebody who spent 8 years being tortured in prison, whose wife spent 6 years tortured in prison, worse than he was, and whose son was also tortured in prison, and they were all separated from one another. They couldn't even be with one another for years. How in the world could a person ever say that about his torturers and his persecutors? Yet we find it hard to forgive somebody when they cut in front of us in Starbucks. That's a very real thing. Yet Richard Wurmbrand never once announced faith, never once let go of God. Instead, he was thankful for God. He was thankful for this lesson that he learned. He says this in his book. He says, they taught us physical beatings could be endured, and that the human spirit, with God's help, can survive horrible tortures. They taught us the technique of secret Christian work, which was a preparation for a far worse ordeal to come, an ordeal that was just before us. That's what he said when he was imprisoned by the Nazis. I don't even know how you do that. How do you have such a positive outlook when these things are going on? How are you so thankful for those things? How do you even come up with that stuff? If I was in his position, I'd be focused on trying not to die. I mean, and I think that's a very real thing. I think, I want to see tomorrow. Instead, he's like, I have an opportunity to share. And the first officer he met from the communist regime, he shared the gospel. He had the thankfulness and the heart and the faith to just start sharing right there. Wow. Yet we can walk by hundreds of people and never say a thing about God. We sort of miss this point, this idea of thankfulness sometimes. There's more. I mean, this isn't just something that happened 50 years ago and we don't have to worry about it anymore. It's happening now. Last year, this year. There's a story of a pastor in Iran. He led an underground church, a house church. If you don't know, in Iran, the government forbids Christian worship, and they oppress you, and they attack you for that sort of thing. You can't be an openly professing Christian in Iran. It's illegal. You'll get caught for blasphemy laws against Islam. You'll get thrown into prison. You'll get tortured for that. You can be exiled by your family. Your entire family, if they find out you're a believer, they kick you out of the house and they shun you. And in their culture, you're better off dead than being shunned. Yet this man decided, I'm going to get pastor, and I'm going to make a house church, and I'm going to bring other believers in, and I'm going to teach them about God, and they're going to teach others. When he knew all of these things, and Eventually, his house church was raided by the government. They came into his house church, they kicked his door down, and they took him to prison. They took him to prison, and he spent 3 years in prison in Iran. In those 3 years, he did not vote. He did not cry. He did not whine. He was thankful. Because he said, God, I have an opportunity to share with people who are in prison at the lowest of lows, with no other hope in the world. Now I can tell them about God, and they can hear you. That is a spirit of thankfulness. That is a position of thankfulness. That is a stance that says, I'm thankful for just being alive today, because I can tell more people about God. That's kind of hard for us to understand, because we don't come to church with the fear that the police are going to break the doors down and start arresting people. We don't have that fear. So it can be really hard for us to understand, like, how hard is that actually? And it makes us feel bad, just like, well, I can't even, I have to have my clothes clean, my pants ironed, my shirt has to fit right. We have to have all these things, and if it doesn't work out, I'm having a horrible morning. We have to really start to think about what we have to be thankful for. So I have some things here we can apply to ourselves as we go out from this place. So on that next slide, I think my application should be there. Yes. This is how you're going to apply it to yourself today. Number 1, count your many blessings. That's such a good hint. Count your many blessings. I mean, if I sit here and I start thinking about it right now, I had a bed to wake up in. I was warm. I had clothes. I was able to drive myself to church. I had a house with a roof. I had blankets. I had a heater. I have so many things I could be thankful for right now. Just this morning. Count your many blessings, because you have a lot. Being here right now is a blessing. Being alive right now is a blessing. Start counting those blessings. Start having that spirit of thankfulness, just being thankful that God, thanks for letting me wake up this morning. Because sometimes we don't realize that today wasn't promised. That's a scary thought. Today was not promised. Tomorrow was not promised. Yet we woke up today. We have to be thankful for that. Pray for somebody else who is struggling. There is a service that you can sign up for free. No spam, no ads, nothing like that. It is, if you go to thevoiceofthemartyrs.com, you can sign up for their newsletter. And they send out prayer requests from hostile and restricted nations where Christians are being persecuted and killed for their faith. And you can pray for them. You can pray for their families. You can pray for other people who are trying to go to those places. People are going to those places actively just to tell people about Jesus. Not to fight wars and not to bring food, but they're just going so that they can tell them what God knows. They're risking their lives just to say those words. And you can pray for those people. Pray for someone else who is struggling. 3, be grateful for the things God already did. Again, being here is a blessing. Having a family is a blessing. Having people around you is a blessing. If there's even just one person in your life that you can be thankful for, you should. You should make it known that you're thankful for them. Because you don't know how many more opportunities you have to be that way. You never know. Nothing is promised yet. So be grateful for the things God already did. So one more thing as I wrap this up. I think it's on the next slide. Keep it going. Focus on the good things, the things that God has already blessed. That's how you're going to keep it going. How are you going to continue to pray for someone who's struggling? Just remember, God's already done this for you. God gave me the opportunity to be here. God gave me the ability to leave school a little early, right? I'm super thankful for that. That means I didn't have to go to class on Monday and Tuesday. There's so many things that we can focus on. Just the fact that I get to go to college is something I can focus on. It's not an opportunity everybody gets. I can focus on that and be happy with that. Focus on the good things, the things God has already blessed us with. A lot of us in this room have seen something in our life that we can be thankful for, something in our life that we would consider a blessing. For a lot of parents in the room, probably your children. For a lot of us young people in the room, our parents. For some of us who might think, oh, I don't have anything I can be thankful for. I don't have parents. I don't have siblings. I don't have a home. You're alive. And you're here. That is something to be thankful for. And, we may think that by our standards of comfort that we live by every single day, that I don't have a jacket today. I'm kind of, I'm really suffering today. But if that person is just happy to be alive, what's stopping us? If people who have nothing can be thankful every single day, then what is stopping us? So I'll go ahead and pray for us, and then I think the worship team. So go by your heads. Dear Lord, we're thankful for this opportunity we have to come together. We're thankful for this time to be thankful for you, that we take this position of thankfulness that you have shared with us through Paul, that you help us to be thankful for everything that you've done for us. Help us to hold on to the small blessings and the large ones. I pray that you help us to pray for those who don't have anything, to be thankful that we have what we do, and to help those who don't have anything, and to continue to pray for them, and help us to adopt the spirit of thankfulness that they have. Pray that you be with us and help us to dwell on these things and help us to enjoy this holiday season with one another. In Jesus' name.